Design is 80% of your motion graphic workflow, and it's pretty important to know that as an editor. So today we're going to be learning how to improve your design skills by 300%. And all you have to do is listen along and follow my design framework, the one that I have conjured up and built up over the past 5 years of my own experience. So if you don't know who I am, my name is dannyrio. I've been editing for about 5 years. I've worked with some of the world's biggest creators. I'm not joking about that. I'm not like other people. You can actually see their numbers on the screen. You can see the people that I've worked with. And today I'm going to be going through the entire process. And if you still don't believe that I have any credibility on this topic, then we can just simply gander over to the box of proof here. So on the left, we've got some of my work and also some work of some editors that I've been helping and training recently. And this is the work before. You can kind of see it's all right. You know, you can probably notice you've got some stuff going on, but then we move over to the after and we can see all of this, right? You can see this beautiful collection of work here. And overall, you can tell there's a big difference in skill gaps between this and this. And the same editors that made these are the same ones that have made these. And today I'm going to be taking you through the exact framework that I've taught these guys and that I've used for myself to improve our design by 300%. This entire video is going to be split into the foundational pillars that I carry on my back and that I always stand by before I ever make any other claims about design. Then we'll be talking about attention. So how to use your design to garner attention, how to redirect it, how to actually manipulate it so that viewers look where you want them to. Then after that, we're going to be looking at context. So how can we actually provide context for the viewers? How can they understand more about the video with us having to do less work? And then ultimately, we're going to be moving into the emotion aspect of it. How can we actually evoke emotion? How can we make them feel more things? How can we get them to be more engaged and to create more of an emotional bias towards our motion graphics? And I know that sounds weird, like how can you get them to be emotional with your motion graphics? But don't worry, I'll be breaking this down shortly. But first of all, let's start over with our two foundational pillars of my design philosophy. So the first one is rasters and vectors. And if you don't know what rasters and vectors are, they are essentially our two forms of digital media. So we have rasters, which are your PNGs, your MOVs, your MP4s, and then you have your vectors, which are built-in program layers. So stuff like shapes, stuff like text, stuff like 3D. These are your vectors. Now, the difference between these two are the way that they can be scaled. So what I've done here is I've got 5 examples across these two that kind of support my idea of you using vectors, right? Now, when editors are making their animations, at the beginning, they like to start using a lot of rasters, a lot of PNGs, and a lot of overlays. And that's fine. But, you know, you start to create work that looks like this, and you feel like you get a little bit lost. And I am a big advocate for using vectors, which results in work like this. And not only have I written down these 5 bullet points that help us to understand why vectors are better than rasters and why you should stop animating with PNGs and things like that. But I've actually got a bit of an example here to show you how Rust or vectors work. We'll get into that later. But we have 2 circles here, right? And they're both yellow. They're both the same size. They both look the same. But here's how rasters and vectors work. So if I were to scale up this image, this circle, we can see we've got these spiky pixels, these edge pixels. And that's what happens with a raster. You see, because within these 4 frames is an exported image. This is changed, this is permanent. This is kind of like a tattoo. You can't take it back. Sure, you can paint over it, but you can't remove it. This is permanent. So anything within a raster file is permanent. You can't change it, you can't morph it, you can't adjust it, you can't animate the properties of it. However, if we were to scale up this circle on the right and then zoom in again, we can see it's actually smooth, right? Look, it's smooth. It's nice and smooth. There's no pixels. There's no edge problems. Why is that? Well, it's because vectors work differently to rasters. You see, within these 4 lines and these 4 corners, it isn't a fixed and permanent shape layer. It's actually just a calculation measured on a geometric graph. What does that mean? Like, let's slow down here. Well, I've got an image here to kind of show you how vectors work. So if I'm going to drag these two here, your rasters, your images, they're kind of just like drawing a bit on a bit of paper. You can't really change where you've drawn. Like, that's just what you've drawn, right? When you scale it up, things don't change. However, because vectors are built into the actual computer, if you put them on a plot point, right? If you put them in like the very center of a geometric graph, we can see the numbers that it touches is 3 on the y-axis, and also -3 at the bottom, 3 on the x-axis, and then -3 on the other side. So every time we increase the scale on our vector layer, so this goes the same with any shape that you'd have in After Effects or Premiere, if you increase the size of the shape, every single anchor increases along with it. So now you can see that the numbers reaching about like 6.5, nearly 7, same here, same here, same here. And it keeps changing. So the way that your program, the way that your software is actually measuring this circle isn't through, a fixed amount of pixels or different hex codes, because it's not like painted imagery. This is just one hex code, made in a shape. And now, like, you can continuously just, make this bigger and bigger and bigger, and it will keep running the same calculations to the point where you can make it this big, zoom in, and it's still smooth. You can see that. There's no problem, it's still smooth. So the reason this matters is because when you go through the entire motion graphics process and then you render it, your quality is already going down because the software itself, After Effects or Premiere, it's already going to rasterize everything on there anyways. And then you upload that onto YouTube. And then once that's uploaded to YouTube, YouTube puts it through its bitrate process, and then the bitrate goes down for, let's say, for free members. Obviously, people with premium, probably they can get the full experience, but it'll still be, pixelated because it's now an MP4. But, even for the free members, the bitrate goes down. So it goes down and down and down and down throughout this entire process. So why would you do that when you can just start off with vectors and then tackle that raster entropy, right? So this is one of the points that I've written down here. With the other 4 being, number 1, actually, I've already talked about this as well. Your software already rasterizes your work anyways, so you might as well start with a vector. Number 2 is when you're creating these animations with these images, you have to go look for images. So perhaps you'll use some kind of website, but remember when I did this, I would start always on Google Images. So then you go on Google Images, you'd find something, and then you'd be like, oh, I like that. You download it, and then you have to deal with the whole transparent background thing. And I'm sure there's tools to fix that, whatever, but then let's move over to the next case, which is the fact that images don't belong in the same art style. So you'd now have to find a bunch of different images that fit the same art style. Because if you tried to make an animation with a cartoon palm tree and then a realistic palm tree, it looks wacky and weird, and it's kind of like breaking this sense of reality. Now, of course, viewers aren't stupid. There's no sense of reality because it's an edited video, of course, but you've now immediately fail to create any form of immersion. Like whenever they watch this video, they're gonna think this is edited. Like, I can tell somebody edited this, which sounds really weird, but when you watch like any high production video or movie, you never think about the editors. You're just there enjoying it, right? And that's what editing's supposed to do. It's not supposed to make you think, oh wow, this is great editing, or oh wow, this is really shit editing. You're just meant to enjoy. And rasters already kill your opportunity of building a world of ambiance because they're in completely different art styles all the time. And the final one is, you create all your work from scratch in your own art style. You can make all of the stuff look the way that you want it to, which is exactly what everybody does here. You want a pizza themed background? Well, then you can use rasters. You want like a kind of gaming retro? You've got that. You want one about burgers and hot dogs in the back? Well, you got that. You want one about recon and night vision and stuff? Well, you got that. So you can see that vectors are obviously far superior in that sense. So you can already create your own art style. Now, I understand that it's easier probably to have the PNGs play out and, add a few transform effects and edit everything in Premiere and, have your animations and stuff. But of course, when you start to make the switch, it's going to be harder at first. It's obviously going to be a lot more difficult. You're going to have to put in more work at the beginning, but it's worth it. It is always worth it. It's going to look much better. And you are going to start unlocking these parts of your creativity you never knew you had. And that's when things start to look much, much better. And you'll be a better editor than you were before. So that's my argument with rasters and vectors, and that's the first pillar done. Now the next one is After Effects. This week I've seen a lot of people ask me about After Effects. I've seen some tweets about After Effects and Premiere and whether I should be using After Effects or should I focus on Premiere only. And I've had this question asked to me for about 2 years now. So I kind of want to put this entire argument to bed. I'm very exhausted of this. So let's first of all understand that they're entirely different softwares, which we're going to get into later. Right? In fact, we have 3 arguments here that I've written out just so we can put this to bed. Number 1, market saturation and probability of success. Number 2 is the purpose of each software. Number 3 is the design depth, right? So number 1 is about probability of success. So when people ask me, should I be using After Effects? Someone will often cut in and say, well, you don't actually need it. Like, you can still succeed with just Premiere. Yeah, that's possible. Like, I won't deny that is possible. I have seen people do it, but then possible means nothing to literally everyone when you think about it. Possible just means that physics allows it. That's what possible means. Everything else is possible. You could use that same argument to say it's possible for me to become an astronaut. It is possible. It is possible for me to quit everything and become an academy footballer. It's possible for me to direct a Marvel film. It is possible because physics allows it. But what we actually want to focus on is probable, not possible. The difference is that probable is what is more likely. Am I more likely to succeed with After Effects or am I more likely to succeed on Premiere only? I can guarantee you so much it's always going to be After Effects. Like I said, I know one kid that succeeded with Premiere. I could name you 10 people, right, off my dome. I've gotten to 10K per month with After Effects, okay? Now, granted, they'd use Premiere as well, but that doesn't change the fact that they would still create their design and animations in After Effects. Think about it. There are over 10,000 editors competing for the same clients, and most already struggle to differentiate. So reducing your toolkit and your tools will only lower your odds. So editors who master After Effects instantly will stand out because not as many people can deliver the same outputs that they can. Success isn't about possibility, it's about probability. Anyone can become rich. Anyone can become rich. It is possible. But think about what's probable. So let's put it this way, like, sure, you can succeed with Premiere only, make your design in Premiere and stuff. Let's say you do like 10 hours every single day. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 every single day. And then at some point you do this for like 2 years and then you're like, yes, I made 10K per month with editing just on Premiere. With those same inputs, by spending the same 10 hours every single day for 2 years, you could have probably gotten there in 6 months or like a year with using After Effects. So what was the point in that? Like to prove a point? Like seriously, what is the point? Like, are you really going to put your ego through the ringer and try and prove a point to people, then find success? Really? Because if that sounds pretty petty, bro. Because it is possible, but After Effects is going to help you to get there much faster. Number 2, software purpose. Organization and design. Now, Premiere Pro was actually built around the timeline. It was built to accommodate the timeline. Okay, it's more of a organization software than it is a design software, right? It's mostly about assembling. And I want you to think about it. Like, seriously, think about it. When someone buys an ultra-wide monitor for editing, do you think they use that monitor for design or do they use it for their big fucking timeline? Probably their big timeline. On After Effects, they have a button where you can hide layers so you can focus on the program monitor. Premiere doesn't have that. Premiere has a big timeline. Like, people are starting to use Premiere instead of Avid to edit movies. And Adobe's picking up on that, and they are starting to really hone in on that. Now, granted, Premiere's also starting to head into some more, program monitor friendly stuff. Like, for example, they have the drag tool, so you can click the middle mouse button and drag around your program monitor with Premiere. Great. After Effects had that for years. Because again, it's built around the program monitor. Everything is designed for the design. So even when you're creating, like psychologically you feel so free and happy and it's just so much easier to focus on your design. But Premiere, if someone told me to make the same designs I make in After Effects, but in Premiere, I would kill myself. I genuinely, it is so difficult to use that software. Not because I don't use it or I don't know how to use it. Like, I still use it for editing and my cutting and sound effects and music and everything but my motion graphics. So After Effects accommodates the program editor. Premiere Pro accommodates the timeline. Now, moving on to design depth. After Effects has buttons to enable vector workflows. So for example, the animate button. When you go down and you create a shape or you create a text, you can animate it. You can't do that in Premiere. And even just doing the most basic of stuff, trim paths, you can do that, but you can't do that in Premiere. And that will make your work look so much better than anyone on Premiere. Like, some dope will edit on Premiere and he will go through the ringer just to prove it to you, like, I edited this on Premiere. I don't care. I don't care. You spent like 30 hours on that. I can spend like 5 hours making the same thing. Because again, After Effects was designed for that stuff. Let's kind of use that same argument from earlier, right? Let's use that probability and possibility. So earning 10K per month is possible. And sure, it's possible to do it with $100 videos and edit 100 videos a month. But it's vastly more achievable to do that with $2,000 videos and just edit 5 videos. And also, let's be real, would you rather edit 5 videos a month or 100? Basically me asking, would you rather have more free time or no free time? It's possible, but what would you rather do? And After Effects, it can provide that quality that Premiere can't. So you can either have your results or you can have your ego. You can't have both. So argue with possibilities all you want, but all I know is that I've seen the numbers and I can tell you success is a lot more probable with After Effects. And also you can actually live a bit of more of a life when you're editing for more higher paying videos. Now we're moving over to attention. So with attention, we're going to be going over the 3 main and the most basic and the most introductory design principles that you can learn for design. And on top of that, I've added my very own 4-layer sequence that'll help you to actually create more structured compositions or, edits. Okay, so let's start off with hierarchy. Now, hierarchy is about, well, it's in the name. It's what has most power on screen, and there's a reason for that. So this is an edit that I made a while ago. You can see all this stuff that I've drawn on. It's from the screenshot, but believe me, when I edited it, it wasn't there. And I've labeled 3 points. So I've highlighted the GeoGuessr text because the video was about GeoGuessr. And then I've highlighted the start and pick map text. And then I've highlighted the general perimeter of my arcade model. And the reason for that was because I have a 3-part flow when it comes to hierarchy. And it's pretty common, most graphic designers use it. Now, hierarchy is measured by these 4 factors. So placement, color, movement, size. When it comes to placement, whatever is most in the center is going to be more attention grabbing than something in like the bottom left or like over here or over here, because this is directly in the center. Like, think about it. When viewers are watching the videos, where are they going to watch? They're not going to look over here or down here or at the mic or at the little light switch. They're going to look here direct. The way that I've got OBS set up is I'm in the middle and my nose is directly in the middle. So you're going to be looking at me more than you're going to be looking at my surroundings. So the hook is the first thing you want people to look at. And obviously that has to be measured by being the most dominant in these 4 factors. So placement. Yeah, it's pretty dominant in placement. I can say that for sure, because if we think about it, it's the closest thing to the center, right? And on top of that, let's think about color. Now, everything here is generally blue. We've got a bit of yellow and green, and the edges I've made pretty dark. Like I've added a CC to it so it wasn't so vibrant and you wouldn't really focus on this Pac-Man logo. You'd more focus on my GeoGuessr. And also, there's this red here. And red is contrasting with the rest of the composition very nicely. So yeah, I would say that it is doing well on both of those. Movement, well, I can't show movement because this is a screenshot, but I can demonstrate it, right? And in this one, by the way, it was moving, like it was bobbing up and down, and nothing else was moving. So I'm going to give it to that as well. But how movement works is, well, think about it. It's still hierarchical, just on movement. So if I had like my left hand moving like this, this is moving more than anything else on the screen right now. But then if I introduce this, this spazzy hand, it's moving a lot more than anything else on screen, right? You can see, and then you'd probably be looking at my spazzy hand because it's moving so frantically. And your mind is probably gonna, anticipate that as danger, which is why it's so alarming to see something spaz out like that. And anything that moves the most or the most frantically is going to be the thing that viewers look at. That's generally how it works. So it doesn't have to be always moving so crazy, but if only one thing moves, you're going to look at that. Also size. It is the biggest thing on screen. Let's be real. So yeah, it wins on size. And yeah, so hierarchy is just, you need to have a 3-flow framework. So you need to have your hook, you need to have your secondary detail, which is the thing that they look at after the hook. And it's got to be like complementary of the hook, and then your finisher, which is like the finalized effect. So for example, when you clicked on this video, you probably looked at my face first, and then you started looking at my hat, and then you started looking at the stuff around me. Hook, secondary detail, finisher. And the finisher's mostly just supposed to be like the surroundings. It's supposed to get an idea for the ambiance and the world building that we're going to be doing with our motion graphics. And then after they've consumed the finisher, you need to move on quickly to the next thing, because we're just here to buy a bit of time. We need to keep up our attention, right? So after they've consumed the finisher, which is only going to take like less than a second, then you move on and you provide some new visual information. But yeah, hierarchy is a go-go. In fact, let's just cross it off like that. Next, we have balance. So balance is about, well, balance. Right? So think of like a scale, and if something's heavier, then it's going to go down here. And if it's lighter, it's going to go up here. So balance is all about creating a sense of harmony and a bit of satisfaction to the viewer's eyes. So we have a frame here from an editor that I coached by the name of Brandon. And this was a composition he made for a video, right? Now, there's not entirely like completely perfect balance, but you can see that we have the weight of this equals the weight of this. Now, it's obviously like you can tell the height of the, the text isn't exactly the same with the entire little man that he's got here. But generally, when viewers look at this, they're not going to do exact measurements, right? They're not exactly going to get like their spirit level and their rulers and their protractors out to measure everything. No, they're just going to watch it, right? And this still gives like a general kind of feeling of balance with the video, right? So this equals that. And you don't always have to have balance in your videos. Sure, it's good. Like, it's nice to be symmetrical, but you don't really have to have it. If you want, you can still just primarily focus on hierarchy or use balance and, unbalanced compositions, to direct viewers onto where to look. Because again, this is all about attention. We need to not only just maintain their attention, but show them where to look. And you can always use some form of asymmetrical balance to, get them to look at the next layer. So next up, we have rhythm. Now, rhythm I really like, and I'm going to explain why. So we have an example here. We have this Wheel of Fortune video, again by the same person, Brandon, because you can see the the Dragon Ball logo. Now I'm going to explain a bit about rhythm a bit more in depth here, so you can get a bit of an understanding as to what it is, why it's important, and how you can use it. So we have 3 examples here, and I'm going to be starting off with this one. So when you look at this, what does it kind of look like to you? To me, it looks like a bit of a corridor, like a walkway, a hallway that you could just walk through. And that's what rhythm does. It gives you a sense of direction. It makes us feel like we're going down here, like this, going down this hallway, right? And all of it makes it feel like it's pointing towards down here. So because we're going to be looking at size first, this is the biggest thing, in this picture. What we're going to do is we're just going to keep looking down here, and our minds are going to naturally just follow the path and move down here to the little circle. The same thing that we have here. We start with this big circle here, and then we look down to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And then we look up, and then we just keep going down this same thing because our eye is attracted to the next thing, and we feel obligated to just look at the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until we're finished. So the same thing here. And I'm going to show you how to use this form of rhythm in a video that can actually help you in an applicable situation. So we can see here, when we look at these circles, I can guarantee you did not look at this one first. You looked at this one, right? So we start here, and then we go all the way down, all the way down, all the way down, right? But no one ever looks here. So I could flip this round if I want, and I'm still going to have the same results. People are still going to look at the biggest thing first. Even if you try to look here, your mind is still just going to wander here. And because we've been looking at this long enough, you could probably argue, oh, I'm still going to look here. But when this suddenly pops up on a viewer's screen, I guarantee you they're going to look at the biggest thing first, especially when it's substantially bigger. Like when you take these 2 away, this is going to look a lot bigger than this. It's not like we're going to be looking left to right. Like I've had some editors with this misconception. They'll say, oh, it's all about left to right because that's how I read. No, Like nobody thinks to look at the left side of the monitor, because if that was the case, we'd be looking at the left side, not the center, right? It's all about what's biggest to us and what catches our eye the most, right? This is why hierarchy is important to learn. So if we were to use this in a video, this is how it would look. Now, let's say you have a client you're working for, and he's going through 4 different challenges, or he's collecting 4 different items for his video. We're gonna, go these 4 different football challenges and yada, yada, yada. So throughout it, you could have a sense of rhythm where it scales out and scales in as you go through the chapters. And obviously this is going to be a repeating visual. So chapter 1 at the beginning, the first challenge, we start here. And then as this scales down, this scales up. And then as you go into chapter 3 and, or challenge 3, because challenge 2 is finished, then you'll scale this down and you'll scale this up. And then as you get to the final challenge of the video, you scale this down and scale this one up. And as viewers continuously watch the video, they're going to expect and they're going to naturally predict that we're going down this route, right? We're going left to right because, the progression is, well, this has gotten bigger and then this has gotten bigger and then this has gotten bigger, right? Pretty simple stuff. So that's rhythm. And here's how it works in this one. Now, rhythm works in the same way that balance does. It doesn't have to be symmetrical balance all the time. It doesn't have to be perfect. So you can see here with Brandon's thing, we've got all sorts of, I guess you could say, like mistakes or, asymmetrical work. But what Brandon's done is actually a lot more genius than you'd think. The change in shape, the change in height, it makes it a lot more visually interesting to the viewers. The more and more irregular your rhythm looks, the better. Because it just looks more interesting. Because a design like this is going to be a lot more visually interesting than a design like this. Like, this is just repetitive. This is boring. This doesn't actually lead you anywhere. This is just called repetition. And we don't really care for repetition in the same way. You see, this irregularity looks nice because we've got some gaps here. You can see, there's some jump ups. There's even a bit of overlap in each of the wheel. So you think, well, these all look still a little bit weird, but what do all of these have in common, right? All of these, what do they have in common? Well, they're all meeting in a circle, meaning despite their differences in, overlap and shape and size, they all go down in the middle. So they are actually, again, using rhythm to point you in the direction of the middle. And although we don't really look at the actual, the circle in the background, we're actually being pointed towards the text, Wheel of Fortune. So rhythm is creating a sense of direction. Now, so far, we've covered the 3 most basic forms, the most introductory forms of design. You're already doing very well. So congratulations, pat yourself on the back. Give yourself a nice pat. So these are the 3 things that you generally need to create a basic understanding of design. Now we're going to move into the 4-layer sequence, something that I have created for myself and my students. And it's worked very well for us so far. We've created some very beautiful stuff, as you can see from earlier. Now, I'm going to explain to you how the 4-layer design works. So we can see all this work that I showed you earlier, and they also have, examples of 4-layer design. Let's go for this one. So this one is another student, and I'm going to show you how the 4-layer design works here. So I'm going to lay them out, and the first one being your subject layer. Now, a subject layer is the main part of the composition. It's like the president or the queen. It's like the protect the president, protect the queen, but you're like everything else on the screen is like Secret Service, and your subject layer is like the president. They need to protect, because the subject layer is the thing that you want the viewers to get most familiar to. It's going to be like your new friend if you were the viewer. This is the one thing you want them to get familiar to, and you always need a face. And this is what the subject layer is going to be. It's going to be like the face of the brand. So the way that McDonald's has Ronald McDonald and KFC has Colonel Sanders and, I don't know, Real Madrid has Vinicius Jr., I guess. Mostly Ronaldo, let's be real. But anyways, point being, they always have a face for the brand. And you want your subject layer to do the same thing. And the biggest mistake that I see editors make with their motion graphics is they always put up text. It's very frustrating for viewers. You'd be surprised, but it's very, very, very frustrating to see text all the time. So text is meant to support something else. Text is never meant to be the star of the show. Text is like the nerdy assistant who's always in the background helping out and, does a lot of the carrying, but isn't supposed to be the main star. So you don't want it to be the main thing that people always see. You want it to be paired with something. So we can see here, the subject layer is the burger and fries. And then it's paired with the text layer, which is the only rule. So this was kind of out of context. This was just screenshotted from some work that he did. But yeah, you can see the only rule that is paired with this. And then after that, we have our foreground layer. So the foreground layer is made for depth. The foreground layer is meant to show that it is not the background layer and that we actually have more to us than you think. So foreground layer in this one is going to be like the little camera, you know, the camera HUD. And this, for this one, it's going to be like the Amazon logo in each corner. For this one, it is going to be the flower petals and the sun and the little sparkle. In this one, it's going to be the tomatoes and like the basil, and I think that's basil, right? But yeah, they're supposed to create some form of depth. And then ultimately, we're going to have the background layer. Now, the background layer is very important. The background layer kind of sets the tone. And you can see you can get away with using colors in any kind of color in your background. You make it dark, you can make it bright, you can make it whatever. You can see in this one, they have red, but the yellow is the main thing that we're looking at. We can see we've got blue, but the black is the main thing, the subject layer. And all you need is the subject layer to be completely contrasting to the background layer. The yellow contrasts to the red. Right? The green and yellow contrast to the purple. The yellow contrasts to the red. The pink contrasts to the gray or the black. This blue and green is still far more interesting than this blue, right? So you just want your subject layer to contrast to your background layer. That's it. It doesn't have to be a specific color. It can even just be blue on blue. So light blue to dark blue background. That's all it really has to do. And you still need to make it somewhat interesting because the background is the largest thing on the screen. It sets the tone. It creates the entire ambience, the entire experience for the viewers, right? Which is why it's very important that you do it right. And all you really need is these four. And that doesn't mean that your entire After Effects has to have only 4 layers. Because let's be real, when viewers are watching your videos, they don't count like, oh, that's a layer and that's a layer. They just watch. The reason that we have these 4 is for the viewers to actually organize the entire composition themselves. For them to understand that this is different to that. And this is different to that. And this is different to the eye in the background. All you need is for them to differentiate each layer from each other and to understand each of their purposes. Because every single motion graphic you make must have purpose. Again, another problem I see a lot of editors have is they just don't include purpose and direction in their videos. And this is how the term flashy animations and flashy editing comes up. Please spread the word, right? If you want people to stop doing this, you need to find a purpose that each motion graphic fulfills. Because if the B-roll can't be used here, if it can't, fulfill the context that the viewers require, it takes a lot to provide context, which is why you're lucky we're going to be moving over to context. So I have a scale here of an intensity when it comes to providing context, right? I have different methods that I use, and generally it gets a little bit weird and a little bit extreme later down the line, and I'm going to do my explanation, but I have a breakdown here of how we could do all of that stuff. So the first thing that we do when it comes to providing context is we always do it through B-roll. Now, of course, B-roll is the easiest stuff. If you want to see how something is done or when it's done, or if it's done at all, to avoid viewers clicking off and for them to think it's clickbait, you can just show B-roll. So if you ever think of like those videos that have like in the top left or right corner and it says coming up or coming soon or next up, and it'll be like some crazy footage and B-roll that comes up later on. Like, that's the easiest way to provide context, right? So that's number 1. But then number 2 is providing context through your intro. So when you're editing your intro, you'll have a script provided to you. And that's great because the script can go through the entire dialogue. But you have to pair that dialogue again with some animations. So you can add in your music, your sound effects to do a little bit of world building and to build a bit of context. So let me give you one example. If somebody said, here are the 3 key things you need for video editing, and that would turn into a motion graphic of one symbol, a second symbol, and then a third symbol, and they'd all be different things. And I'd be taking you through the 3 key things you need for video editing, right? And that can be done in the intro. We can provide that kind of context in the intro. Now, granted, the voiceover kind of does most of it because I'm telling you what's going to happen. And then that's when the next part of the intro comes up, which is providing context without direct context, which is sound and text. So I found this out recently where American airports, they don't have any symbols, right? They just have text. So if you need to go to the toilet, you have to look at all the signs and then you have to read each individual one until you read toilets. And that doesn't sound like a lot of work because reading is very easy, but when you're in an airport, you're probably under a lot of stress and hassle. And if you need a toilet, that doesn't really help, does it? Right? And in European airports, we have symbols. You know, if you need a toilet, you'll see like a symbol of a man and a woman, you know, divided with a line to say men's room and women's room, you know, the ladies' room. So think about it that way, right? Imagine if there were no symbols and everything was just text. You would hate reading. If people wanted to read and if all your animations were just text, they would go read. But they're here to watch a YouTube video. They want you to do it for them. And symbols are just a form of pattern recognition. It's the same thing. It's still language. Symbols are still language. They're just much, much easier to read. So for example, you know, if we removed all sound and text and subtitles, could you get an idea of what this video is about? Now, you don't have to understand the entire premise and what's going to happen, but could you get a bit of an idea? Could you see a woman and you could see the German flag and you could see, granted, you'd have to watch the video without it. This is just a frame, but you know, you'd see that this is a selection button and we're going through a selection of countries. We see the Earth, we see a geography map, we see countries, flags being, you know, selected and a woman here. So what possibly could Earth and map and lady, or not even just lady, because there were multiple people, so multiple people walking in, and then flags being selected or rotated. You know, so if I had this kind of, without any sound, without any text, could I, as a viewer, have an understanding for what this is about? I would assume that this is some kind of show where people are auditioning for some kind of multi-linguistic show, or they are here to guess something to do when it comes to flags or, you know, guessing countries or something. Well, it was about guess the language, right? Which is a close enough guess. And that is much better than having nothing, okay? So you essentially just give them context clues. When you can't fully understand something, you always look for context clues. It's like being in a foreign country with somebody and not being able to speak their language. So you have to start picking up on context clues. You can probably tell when someone's angry at you if they're yelling, even if you can't understand them, that's a context clue. And you know, this isn't entirely a stretch actually. I've actually got some more proof over here. So I've got 3 frames that I want to show you. So this was the original frame, just screenshotted from the video. And then you take away the text and this is what you're left with. Now, recon means like to scout out, to look. So these exist, right? Recon, you know, soldiers or experts or scouts, they're basically just good at like looking out, so like night vision and shit. And this was like the inspiration. So I just kind of copied the HUD for myself, and this was all made with shapes, all vectors, no images, no nothing. But you can see I've got my little HUD here. But more importantly, the thing that I added was on top of just the kind of scope, I created this shape around that made it look like this kind of eye. If I draw everything out, you can see it kind of looks like an eye. And the whole premise of this, when you take away the text, it still makes it feel like it's got something to do with night vision or something to do with watching or looking, right? Then you just slap on Recon Challenge and it makes it official. So you can still, you know, provide context and, you know, create a scene, create some form of ambiance, you know, without direct context. So as we start to go down the ladder, you're going to notice it's going to get harder and harder to provide context. The next point, which is providing context through one frame. So then we go into the next one. Now, this one, I'm not going to use the excuse of, you know, imagine if this was playing and, you know, this isn't one frame because, well, now this is just one frame, no sound, no text. Could you have an idea? If we have a flag on an island surrounded by islands with waves in water, like what could that possibly be? And by the way, very, very, very big opener is flag has question mark. So I'm guessing the video is about guessing an island or guessing a country or guessing a language. And let's be real, but it's not very easy to visualize languages, right? So the next best context clue would be a country or something like that. So yeah, you could provide context through one frame without direct context. And then we're going to move down to the hardest part, which is providing context through just shapes. So this is to the point where we have nothing. We have our colors and we have our shapes. Now, this is when you have to start using things like primitive color associations and, things like hierarchy and design laws to understand just design in general. Now, primitive color associations, before you go and search it up. So I'm going to start dumbing down my language. I'm going to make it easier for people who don't understand English as well. It essentially means the kind of associations your mind has with certain colors based on your primal functions, your little monkey brain. So, for example, when people see red, they think blood, which is why it's the most attractive color, because it's the one that makes us so alert, right? It's the color of power, it's the color of statement, it's the color of romance sometimes. And again, that romance can be looked at differently. Let me just show you an example of how colors can be interpreted differently. So I have two images here, very poorly drawn, but on the one on the left is one where a man is looking and he's far away, but he can see red all around. The room is filled with red. Just imagine that. And then over here is a frame of a zoom in, an ultra, very, very, very close up shot of a woman with red lipstick on. So the dominance of colors will start to interpret different things. And remember, we're using our primitive associations here. So how does our monkey brain think when it sees a lot of red versus not a lot of red? Well, a lot of red would mean there's something bad happening. If you see red on the walls everywhere, are you going to think, wow, that's a lot of lipstick? Or are you going to think blood is all over the walls, right? You're probably going to think that. And that is bad when we think about law of proxemics. So like how close you are to somebody. The way that I'm sitting right now and how close I am from you, I'm like arm's distance away, right? But if I got super close, I'm not going to get that close. There's like probably a couple hundred people watching this, but if I got super close to the camera, you'd feel really uncomfortable. So the person in this frame, he's far away. So we're quite distant to him. The same way that you're getting a bit more distant with me, that's a sign of not trusting. That's a sign of not knowing. And overall, it's not quite as friendly and close as you are to somebody, again, who's much closer to your face. Through shapes and colors, we're just going to be thinking that's bad. There's something bad, something negative is going on. In this one, we're going to be thinking, okay, woman close up with red lipstick. This red lipstick is not meant to be, it's not meant to be anything related to power or making a statement. This is more submissive use of red. This is more hinting towards, hey, this is my red lipstick. This is me hinting towards something to you. And because, again, we're more close up on her face, we've just about cut off her eyes here. We can just see her nose and her lips. Even in cinematography, they'd agree that this is the most intimate you could get with somebody. So the different uses of red here create different meanings entirely. So then you have to start thinking about the way that you use your shapes and the way that you start using your colors. So we've got a few examples here, and I'm only going to break down a few of them. Now, imagine here that your client, he's an affiliate marketer. He has a product that he sells, and in his description, he has affiliate links. So your job as the editor is to make a video that is compelling enough to make people want to buy the paid product and not the free products. So what he does is the video is called 4 free VPNs that you can use. And then obviously he's going to try and promote the paid VPN somehow. So with the visuals that you use in his intro, he's going to say, today I'm going to be going through four free VPNs that you can use and that I recommend. But then we're going to be comparing it with this paid VPN that I think you should definitely use. And we're going to see which one wins, whatever, right? Like that's the usual jargon people use in those videos. So in this one, it could be a form of balance to say, if you paired up all four of these free VPNs, they would be just as good as this paid one. So you might as well get the paid one, right? Because there's a form of balance here that tells us these two are equal. If you did it like this, again, it's to say that this is the biggest and this is the most important and this is green and these are red, therefore these are bad and this is good. Because we know this, right? Green, good, red, bad. I feel like we kind of have a good understanding of this now. Or this one, if this one is over here, and if we think about the way that this comp is split, right? He's got his side. They should probably stick to their side, but these are big bad VPNs that are actually quite harmful and they are kind of creeping up on him. This one's a bit more of a stretch. It's much harder to read, but generally it's all about the narrative that you're going to be painting with your client's footage, because when you start cutting it up, you're going to include and exclude certain things that you want viewers to see and not see. So now you can have this kind of fun thing where you paint these fabricated narratives to make much, much, much more entertaining videos. And you can do that through this. And then you start out with this, you start out with your design, and then you build your way up. One frame, and then do it without direct context, and then intro, and then B-roll. So when you start from the bottom, when you start from the hardest, the depths of it, this is going to be very difficult, don't get me wrong. But when you can start off from the bottom and go all the way to the top, your editing is going to be much better than your competitions. Your design is going to be much better than your competitions. But probably work your way down as you kind of soothe your way into it. But that's just a way to paint a picture of how we can provide context in our videos. Now, we're finally moving over to the big boy, the emotion, the way that we use our colors. Now, this is a frame that I made a while back, right? I made this back in, I want to say late 2023, early 2024. And when I made it, I was kind of proud of like the general video, but this was by far the most hideous frame I had made by that point. I got very lazy with the dust and the grid, and I hated it. I still hate it. It looks hideous. And it got me thinking, like, how do I actually use colors? I never really taught myself how to use colors until I found out about something called the 60-30-10 rule, which is used in interior design, and it's used in, well, now it's used in films, but films had, been inspired from interior design, which is like the organization of furniture and shit. And then I just kind of took it from film and I applied it to my motion graphics. So you have your dominant color, then your complementary, and then your kind of like general subject or, contrasting color, right? So you can see this wall, and then the couch, right? And then also like the little rug. For this one, we can see the general, like the walls and the ceilings and stuff. And then we can see the lights is on 30. And then the guy's, arms and general outfit is green. That's the 10%. Same thing here. 60 for the red. Generally, everything is dominated by red with a hint of yellow, being like the kind of, or orange or whatever this is, like brown, I guess, being on the walls. And then her blue lamp being a complete contrast and being totally different from the rest, which in films will feel a bit irregular, but in motion graphics, it looks beautiful. So yeah, we've got 3 different examples here. All have, the whole 60-30-10 going on. We have 10-30-60. So the 60 being, obviously the blackboard, the 30 being the text, and the 10 being the little pink brain. We can see the brown being the 60, the blue being the 30, and the little greens being the teeny contrasting 10. They're sticking out like a sore thumb. So again, 60 for the black background, 30 for the green, and then 10 for the text. And that's just the best way of organizing your colors. Like I've just learned from, well, first of all, my mistakes. Second of all, just general interior design. And I found the best way of learning is actually not from editors or not from editing in general. I always look, in separate disciplines of life to just learn new techniques. And interior design, weirdly enough, is a great place to look. So on top of this, we can actually take a look at how we organize our motion graphics. So there are general elements of themes and culture that you can implement into your motion graphics to create a certain tone or to tackle a certain tone. The same with the shapes, the same with the contrast and the intensity of your colors, of your shapes that target a certain color and gradients and that target a certain tone. And once you use all of your elements to create this one ambiance of this directed tone, right? Once, if you want to make it cool and calm, if you want to make it about something, some kind of theme, some kind of culture reference that your viewers might know, or sorry, your clients' viewers might know. And then all of these as well. So the abstraction and realism, how realistic is it? How unrealistic is it? The source of light. Is there a source of light? Is there any light? The kind of texture and material. Is it going to be grunge and gruesome? Is it going to be kind of smooth and shiny or whatever? And then emotion and flow. That can also be tonal. So all of these I call my tonal tools. And these just help me to direct my motion graphics in general, my shapes, into one form of tone that will help me evoke emotions in the viewers. And now my goal has been achieved. So there we go. We have my entire design system that I use to create the best viewing experience for my clients, viewers, and just general. It makes it so much easier for me now that I know what to do and the decisions I have to make. And I know that all of this might be kind of overwhelming. I've been recording for like about an hour and a half. So I know there's a lot of information to consume. Now, if you do want help with this and you want to have like a direct plug and play with all of the support that you need, And if you want me to help coach you throughout this entire process to seriously step up your design immediately, like I have with all of these other editors' work, then there's going to be a link in the description where you can come call and, you and I can just have a chat about your current editing situation, how you are with design, if you've done anything to improve your design, and if not, then we can move forward and talk about how I could probably help you. So just book a call if you're interested in that. But apart from that, have a good day.